I immediately put up a sign at my restaurant saying it was temporarily closed and headed to the apartment where my son and his wife lived. The room was completely dark, making it hard to see. The air inside was chilly, and it seemed like the heater wasn't on. Calling out my two grandchildren's names, I stepped inside. "Emily, Kevin, Grandma's here." As I walked further in, I saw two small figures moving in the unlit living room. When I turned on the light, I found Emily, who was painfully thin, shivering in the freezing room. Beside her, Kevin was trembling as he ate a banana from Emily's hand. 4 frightened eyes stared at me. "Emily, Kevin." Unable to bear it, I hugged them both tightly. They clung to me, sobbing uncontrollably. Their little hands gripped my body with all their strength. How lonely they must have been. Their mother had collapsed and was taken to the hospital, but she never came back. They must have been so scared, their little hearts on the verge of breaking. Thinking about what they had gone through, my chest ached. Their father, Jake, wasn't there. When I called him to ask where he was, he just chuckled and replied,
"We're staying at a resort hotel on a family trip. We'll be back tomorrow."
"I see. Make sure you get back safely." With that, I hung up the phone. Later, when he returned home, he was faced with an unbelievable sight. "My name is Kathy. I run a small restaurant, and today's lunch rush is as hectic as ever. This place, Tom's Diner, was handed down to me from my in-laws. Welcome. I'll have your seat ready in just a moment." Since I manage everything by myself, keeping up with the pace is a challenge. Regular customers reassure me when they see me rushing around.
Take your time. No need to rush.
Those few words bring me a bit of comfort. Some customers have been coming here since my in-laws' days, while others drop by because they live or work nearby. I love this time of day, when the place is filled with the energy of people enjoying their meals. Hearing someone say, "This is delicious," makes me secretly do a little fist pump inside. I used to run this place with my husband. People can't function on an empty stomach. That's why we always cooked meals that would give our customers energy. That was his favorite saying. We would plan the menu together, count the cash in the register, and even rearrange the furniture. Finding new ways to improve the restaurant was fun. After our son, Jake, was born, we continued working like that until he was in high school. But when Jake was in his second year of high school, my husband passed away in an accident. It was an incredibly difficult time. I even thought about closing the restaurant. Jake was preparing for college admission, so he couldn't help out. I couldn't imagine running the place alone. Then, one day, a regular customer saw me in town and said, "We're waiting for you." Their warm smile gave me the strength to try again, even if I had to do it alone. "It'll be okay. I'll figure something out." I talked to friends and my still living in-laws and decided to downsize the restaurant to a more manageable scale. 3 months after my husband passed, Tom's Diner reopened. Jake passed his college admission and got into his first choice school.
It's too far to commute from home, so I'd like to live on my own.
Of course, let's go check out some apartments. I tried my best to support Jake's wishes. When he was little, both my husband and I were always tied up with the restaurant, and we didn't get to spend much time with him. The restaurant was busy, and we couldn't afford to neglect it. Even after closing, my husband would stay behind to prep for the next day. I'd go home, cook dinner, and spend time with Jake while waiting for my husband to return.
Daddy, are you working again today?
I still remember how Jake used to ask that every night when he was little. The lonely look on his face is burned into my memory and won't fade. If I could have, I would have loved for the three of us to sit down for meals together more often. But that only happened once or twice. I always felt guilty for making Jake feel so lonely. I want you to learn whatever interests you, find something you're passionate about, and pursue it with everything you've got. I told him that the night before he moved out for college. Jake just nodded slightly, looking down. He didn't say anything else. After he moved out, I continued running the small restaurant on my own. We had enough savings to cover his tuition, so he didn't need to take out loans or apply for scholarships. His 4 years in college flew by in the blink of an eye. During that time, I kept the restaurant going by myself. After graduating, Jake got a job and stepped into the working world. I imagined him in a suit and tie, squeezed into a packed subway on his way to work. The thought of it made me chuckle to myself. My little Jake had grown up so much. And to my surprise, he already had a girlfriend he was serious about marrying. When he introduced her to me, I nearly jumped out of my skin. His girlfriend, Natalie, was stunning. She looked like she could be a magazine model.
Nice to meet you. I'm Natalie. I've been dating Jake.
Her elegant voice and polite way of speaking left me speechless. I even wondered if she came from a wealthy family.
Not at all. Just a normal family.
Even the way she chuckled softly was graceful. I couldn't help but wonder what on earth Jake did to win over someone so amazing. It turned out that rather than moving in together officially, Jake had just ended up living at her place.
I had no choice. My neighbor was way too noisy.
No choice, huh, Jake?
It's fine, really. I had already rented a slightly bigger place, so it worked out perfectly.
Natalie spoke up cheerfully, as if coming to his defense. Her refined speech, graceful mannerisms, and warm smile. I completely took a liking to her and found myself saying this. I hope you guys will stay together forever. Not long after they got married, and 3 years later, they had 2 children. Their first child was a girl, whom they named Emily. The second was a boy, Kevin. I guess I'm a grandma now. I murmured to my late husband's altar, feeling a deep sense of nostalgia. On anniversaries and special occasions, I always placed slightly fancier sweets as an offering. I did the same on the days my grandchildren were born. Even after having kids, Natalie still made time to drop by my restaurant whenever she could.
Hi, Kathy.
Oh, hello, Natalie. How's work?
I switched to a remote job after the kids were born.
Oh my, I guess we live in that kind of era now. I looked at little Emily and Kevin in turns, marveling at them. These tiny kids would one day grow up and stand on their own, just like Jake did. Thinking about it, children felt like such a mysterious thing. I couldn't help but stare at them, mesmerized. As the seasons passed, my grandchildren kept growing. The wrinkles on my face multiplied, and before I knew it, Emily had started elementary school. "How old are you now, Emily?" One day, when she visited the restaurant, I asked her.
I'm 6, but I'll be 7 on my next birthday.
Her response was so well spoken, it was hard to believe she was only in elementary school. She must have taken after her mother. According to Natalie, Emily was also great at looking after her little brother.
They never fight and get along really well.
Natalie said proudly. Everything seemed perfect, like life was moving toward a bright and happy future. But not everything was so simple. There was one thing that worried me, Jake. Even after getting a job, he had trouble holding one down. The first company he joined after college, he quit in less than 6 months.
They expect too much. The pay isn't worth it.
Then he found another job. But again, he quit in under 3 months.
I can't do what I actually want, and they don't even offer remote work. Ridiculous.
You won't get anywhere if you keep switching jobs so often.
It's not my fault. The economy sucks.
Whenever things didn't go his way, he'd complain and quit. Watching him, I could only shake my head with a sigh. If you're not working, then you must be helping take care of Emily and Kevin, right?
No way. That's Natalie's jobs, not mine.
Natalie was the one financially supporting the household instead of Jake. Even while talking to me, Jake was glued to his smartphone screen. What could be so important that he was staring at it so intently?
Oh, Mom, take a look at this. I'm into food blogging, and I post on social media.
He held out his phone, showing me a feed full of pictures from different restaurants. Juicy burgers, spaghetti, breakfast platters, everything looked delicious. Jake was talking about his number of followers and likes, but it all sounded like gibberish to me. Instead of playing around with that, why don't you get a real job?
This isn't playing around. I'm serious about this. I'm trying to become an influencer.
What even is that?
Forget it. Just follow me and start liking my posts, Mom.
I have no idea how to do that.
Give me your phone. I'll install the app for you, and here's how you do it.
His fingers moved quickly, and in no time, he had created an account, set everything up. And he showed me which button to press for likes and how to view posts. But once he left, I was completely lost again. I don't understand any of this. I can't keep up. I set my smartphone aside and focused on balancing the books for my restaurant instead. Whenever I had video calls with Natalie, I realized she too was being pressured to check Jake's social media. There were far more important things right in front of him that needed his attention. For me, being able to see Emily and Kevin over video chat was much more meaningful than social media. After Jake lost his jobs, he briefly helped out at my restaurant. His reason? It seems easier than an office job. Of course, no job is easy, but I was still grateful for the help. These days, it's rare for kids to take over their parents' businesses. I never intended to force Jake to do so. When the time came, I planned to close up shop without hesitation. But I couldn't help but wonder, had something changed in him? Was he finally thinking about taking over the restaurant? A tiny flicker of hope lit up in my heart. Overjoyed, I had Jake work at the restaurant, greeting customers and taking orders. He quickly got along with regulars and chatted with them like he belonged there. For the first week, things seemed to be going well. Maybe this suits him better than an office job. I allowed myself to think that, but by the next week, he started slacking off. He barely took orders, rarely cleaned tables, and hardly greeted customers. Worse, he started scrolling through his social media in front of customers. Then he began asking everyone, regulars and newcomers alike, to follow him and like his posts. The following day, he didn't show up for work at all. "Jake, where are you? Are you taking the day off?"
I'm done with that job. It's harder than I expected.
After that, no matter how many times I called, he never picked up. I was back to running the restaurant alone. In the end, Jake lasted less than 10 days before quitting. From that point on, he was more focused on social media than anything else. Meanwhile, Natalie had started juggling multiple jobs, cutting back on sleep just to make ends meet. I worried that she might collapse one day. But Jake didn't seem concerned at all. He kept up his food blogging and social media posts without a second thought. During one of our video calls, Natalie let her real feelings slip out.
I just wish he could bring in even a little income.
For the first time, she looked genuinely dejected, her shoulders slumped. Her radiant smile was gone, and even her beautiful voice sounded faint. Jake, as usual, was nowhere to be found, out hopping from restaurant to restaurant instead of being home. When I confronted him about it, he always gave the same excuse.
If I become famous and build connections, it'll pay off in the future.
I listened, though I didn't put much stock in his words. But deep down, I still had a tiny hope that if he could somehow make a living from it, I wanted to support him. Maybe I was too soft on him. Even Natalie, still believing in him, couldn't bring herself to criticize him too harshly. And in reality, thanks to his persistence, his follower count and likes were slowly increasing. But we would soon realize what a mistake it was to leave things as they were. One day, like any other, I was at my restaurant. Outside, it was freezing cold, almost like the middle of winter. The sky was overcast, and the forecast said it might snow later that night. Afternoons were usually slow, so I used the time to prep for the evening rush and clean the restaurant. As I was wiping down tables, my phone rang in my pocket. It was Natalie. I assumed it was another casual video call and answered. But her voice on the other end was weak, barely above a whisper.
Kathy, I'm sorry, but I need to tell you something.
She had collapsed from exhaustion a few days ago and was now hospitalized. Hospitalized? Right now? Are you okay?
I'm managing somehow.
You should have told me sooner.
I'm sorry. I wanted to, but Jake said not to.
Jake did?
He said he'd take care of the kids. But I can't stop worrying about them.
Of course. Is Jake at home? I couldn't imagine him actually doing that. But if his wife was in the hospital, surely even he would take care of his own children.
He told me he was watching them. I want to believe him, but
Hearing the hesitation in her voice, I felt a sinking feeling in my gut.
he's been posting pictures on social media. I don't think he's actually with them.
Natalie had been following Jake's social media. On a hunch, she checked the app. Even on the day she was hospitalized and the day after, he was casually posting pictures of pasta. I was speechless as I listened to Natalie.
And that restaurant? It's out of state.
I couldn't waste another second. There was no way two kids, not even 10 years old, could take care of themselves alone. I'm going over there right now.
Wait, I'll come too.
No, you need to stay in bed and rest. I cut her off a little firmly and hung up. If I didn't, she really would have tried to come with me. The doctor had ordered her to rest, and that was final. I immediately put up a sign at my restaurant saying it was temporarily closed and headed to my son's apartment. It was just 2 train stops away. I was grateful I had a spare key for emergencies like this. I quickly unlocked the door and stepped inside. Emily, Kevin, where are you? The room was pitch dark. I could barely see. As I took a step forward, something like a plastic bottle hit my foot. There was no sound. The silence in the apartment was deafening. I took another step. The air inside was freezing, and the heater clearly hadn't been turned on. Emily, Kevin, Grandma's here. As I moved further inside, I saw 2 small figures shift in the unlit living room. When I turned on the light, Emily was there, so thin it broke my heart. Beside her, Kevin was trembling, eating a banana from Emily's hand. 4 terrified eyes stared at me. Emily, Kevin. I couldn't hold back and wrapped them both in my arms.
Grandma,
They clung to me tightly and burst into tears. Their little hands gripped my body as if they'd never let go. How scared they must have been. Their mother collapsed, taken to the hospital, and never came back. Their tiny hearts must have felt like they were about to shatter. Just thinking about it made my heart ache. I'm so sorry I didn't realize sooner. It's okay now. I turned on the heater and pulled out some jackets for them to wear until the room warmed up. Then I boiled some water in the kitchen and made hot chocolate. They both sipped from their mugs eagerly, finishing every drop. But there was still no sign of Jake. I didn't even see his shoes by the door. Hoping it was all just some misunderstanding, I called him. He picked up almost immediately.
Oh, hey, Mom. What's up?
He was chuckling like nothing was wrong. What are you doing?
I'm trying this limited time menu item. It's totally Instagram worthy.
Where are you?
Family trip at a resort hotel. I'll be back tomorrow.
I could hear the noisy chatter and background sounds of a busy place. He is definitely in some tourist area. But he isn't with family, he's alone. Even now, all he cares about is himself. He isn't capable of protecting Natalie, Emily, or Kevin. If he couldn't, then I would. I swallowed my rage and kept my voice calm. I see. Make sure you get back safely.
Huh. Oh, right. I should bring you a souvenir.
Before he could finish, I hung up. He had kept Natalie's hospitalization a secret. And just to try a limited-time dish, he abandoned his children. When I asked Emily about it, she told me that Jake had lied, saying he was going to work.
I knew it. Mom collapsed because she was working too much, right?
Even at her young age, she understood why her mother had fallen ill. She might not have known the word overwork, but she knew what it meant. If even a child could understand that, why couldn't Jake?
Mom looked sick for a long time. That's why I fed Kevin whatever we had in the fridge.
What about you, Emily? Did you eat anything?
No. I held back.
She shook her head. Her little face was hollow, her frame painfully thin for an elementary schooler. She had likely eaten nothing for days.
I haven't been to school. I want to see my friends. But I thought I had to wait for Dad to come home.
Her eyes welled up with tears again. You're such a strong girl, Emily. That night, I decided to stay at the apartment. I wanted to cook something for them, but the fridge was empty. I couldn't even make an omelet with just ketchup. Well, looks like we'll have to eat out. What do you two want? The moment I asked, they excitedly rattled off one dish after another. In the end, we went to a family restaurant and had hamburgers, omelets, and parfaits. Seeing their bright smiles, I finally felt relieved. People can't function when they're hungry. I remembered my husband's words. When we got back home, both kids quickly fell into a deep sleep, their bellies full. As I watched their peaceful sleeping faces, my thoughts drifted to Jake. Even the next day, he didn't come home. I asked Emily about him while checking his social media. Social media is a convenient way to share information, but thanks to it, his actions were completely exposed. He had posted that today he was eating stew at yet another restaurant. Jake, just wait and see. I took the kids with me and headed to the hospital where Natalie was. As it turned out, she had just been cleared for discharge and was settling the bill. At the entrance, Natalie, Emily, and Kevin shared a heartfelt reunion.
But why are you here?
I can't forgive what my son has done. Come stay with me.
But I don't want to be a burden to you.
You're not the burden, my son is. I'm the one who should apologize for how awful he's been. Then I leaned in and whispered a plan to her. Natalie looked surprised at first, but then nodded firmly, determination in her eyes. A week later, exactly when Jake had promised to come home, he finally returned. But his house was already empty.
What? What the hell is this?
Instead of being shocked, he posted about it on social media, treating it like some joke. And just a few minutes later, he showed up at my restaurant.
Mom, you won't believe this. Natalie and the kids.
The moment he walked in, he started rambling in disbelief.
When I got home, the house was empty. There was nothing there.
Oh, and? It was lunchtime, and the restaurant was full of regulars. Clearly hoping for sympathy, he began telling his story to the entire restaurant.
I've been working so hard on social media for my family. But my wife and kids just up and left.
Oh my, how terrible. I responded flatly, but the regulars had a very different reaction. The sound of chairs scraping against the floor echoed throughout the room. And then, slowly and silently, they closed in on Jake.
Right. This is awful, isn't it?
Seemingly oblivious to the tension in the room, he continued trying to rile them up. Then, one of the regulars finally spoke.
You're that JJ guy from social media, aren't you?
Yeah. Are you my fan? Thanks for following.
Like hell I am. You practically forced me to follow you.
What?
The other customers nodded in agreement.
You keep spamming notifications, and when I finally checked, you were treating food like garbage.
Wait, did I do that?
You played around with free toppings, took one bite, and trashed the rest, calling it disgusting.
That was just a joke.
And you barely even took care of your wife and kids while goofing off.
Look, once I make it as an influencer, I'll.
Influencer? My ass.
The regular's face turned red with anger as he roared at Jake. One by one, the other customers joined in, their voices filled with rage. Soon, the entire restaurant erupted in shouts condemning him. Actually, before Jake arrived, I had already told the regulars what had happened. Natalie had canceled the apartment lease right after being discharged from the hospital. Now she and the kids, Emily and Kevin, were living with me. Jake hadn't been providing for his family. He had been off on his own, hopping from restaurant to restaurant. Instead of focusing on his responsibilities, all he cared about was growing his follower count and getting likes on social media. When I revealed everything, the regulars, who had been watching Jake's posts, were furious. One of them declared, "I'll give him a piece of my mind," and gathered the others. That's why they were all here today. Meanwhile, Jake, completely unaware of what was coming, was busy posting on social media as usual.
Stop it. I didn't do anything wrong. Help me.
Tearing up, Jake was shoved out of the restaurant by the regulars.
Don't ever show your face here again.
He was scolded so harshly that he ran away screaming. After that, I never saw him again. Weeks passed. The weather reports were now talking about spring approaching and warning about oak pollen. Lately, I'd been feeling a bit of an itch in my nose. Maybe it was allergies. Natalie, who had pollen allergies, complained that she couldn't stop sneezing. Even some of the regulars seemed to be suffering from the symptoms. I briefly wondered how Jake was handling it, but as far as I knew, he never had allergies. Where he was now, I had no idea. He had been so desperate to become famous that he had even pushed his friends to follow him. But in the end, that backfired. Ever since that day, his social media had been flooded with backlash from followers who had learned the truth. His identity had been exposed, and it was unlikely he'd ever return to this town. It was karma for how he had wasted food. Now I continued running the restaurant while living with Natalie and the kids. At Tom's Diner, we recently launched a website and made it possible for customers to book tables online. Natalie, who worked in web design, handled everything with ease. The website featured pictures of our dishes and stories about the restaurant's history, passed down from my in-laws. And of course, it also included a tribute to my husband.
I never got to meet my father-in-law, but through these stories, it feels like I have.
This is a beautiful website, Natalie. Thank you. But her contributions didn't stop there. She also set up a system to manage our inventory and sales, making bookkeeping much easier. What I used to do by hand was now instantly calculated by the computer with just a few inputs. This is amazing. Even I, who had struggled with smartphones, got used to it quickly. Now that we could also take reservations over the phone, business was better than ever. Emily started coming to the restaurant after school. She even helped answer the phone.
Hello, Tom's Diner. Yes, you'd like to make a reservation?
She still sounded a bit nervous, but when I offered to take over, she shook her head and insisted on handling it.
Our recommendation is the fried chicken. It's crispy and freshly made, with a blend of secret spices for extra flavor.
Reading from her little notepad, she charmed every customer who overheard. The regulars were completely smitten with her. I wondered if, one day, she might take over this place. And with that thought, I continued running the restaurant as always,